We've all been afraid of the dark. So maybe it's night that turns animals into monsters. Think how terrifying a penguin would be if you woke in the middle of the night and it was under your bed. Animals and monsters feature in the creation myths of every culture. Christians identify the goat with lustful sinners, Satan, and soft continental cheeses. Ancient Jews transferred their sins onto the goat and created the scapegoat. For thousands of years, the cat has been both deity and demon, domesticated yet aloof, with the flaming eyes of the devil itself. And black cats get the worst press. Why did medieval Christians see toads as magical and symbols of avarice and lust? Was it because toads often cast spells while hoarding money and having sex with other woodland creatures? It's a theory. Or is it that they mate in public, like the shameless naked amphibians that they are? Is that what made those prudish Christians squirm? The ancient Greeks didn't care. They made the frog the emblem of Aphrodite, goddess of love. The raven has two problems. First off, it's black, so often seen as an ill omen. And secondly, its charming habit of feasting on the bodies of dead animals has given it an association with death. Had it been vegetarian, things might have been very different. Fortunately, the raven knows nothing of our prejudice because it can't speak English. Of all the bad animals, the bat gets the worst press of all. But do they really come out of hell, as bat expert Meatloaf sang in the 1970s? South American chickens certainly think so. The vampire bat steals a sneaky meal from their veins while they sleep. It has an anticoagulant in its saliva to keep the blood flowing. When European naturalists first observed this, they made the obvious link with the bats of the Slavic Dracula legends, and these men had never even heard of Meatloaf. The case against the bat is clearly compelling. But if they must insist on flying round at night sucking blood from unsuspecting poultry, what can they expect? For us, night means danger. For bats, dinner time. In the Old Testament, the bat was an abomination. In the New Testament, it's called the devil's bird. In South American myth, the bat appears as the devourer of the sun. But it seems it's all a big mistake. The bat's not bad at all, just misunderstood. In fact, fear of the bat isn't universal. In the East, the bat is revered. In China, the word for bat also means good luck. If you strip away all the superstition and legend, the bat is a remarkable animal. Like these flying foxes, all bats hang upside down. This is because bat hip joints are attached backward to control their tails, so they can only hang upside down. The bat's remarkable auditory senses allow it spectacular navigation in the dark. Before we understood it properly, we thought it just had very good eyesight. Bats are flying mammals, that's all. They navigate using ultrasonic cries that echo back to their sensitive ears from the world around them, which isn't really scary at all, unless you're a fish. So there we are. They're not from hell at all. They've just got backwards hips and ears for eyes. What could be more normal than that? It's just because of their secretive nocturnal habits that bats have often been little understood. Bats eat mostly insects and fruit, and like birds and bees, they play their part as pollinators of many flowers. Some plants have even evolved to form a special relationship with the bat. As this long-tongued bat feeds, its back rubs along the stamp flower's anthers, which has clearly evolved with bats in mind. The bat then unwittingly carries the pollen on its back from flower to flower. So bats are basically good news if you're a flower, bad news if you're a fish, and particularly unpleasant if you happen to be an insect. A man's best friend is his wolf. Spot the mistake. Hatred of the wolf runs through every culture in the Northern Hemisphere. So what's our problem? OK, so it chases down its prey and then rips it to pieces, and it's a creature of the night, and it howls. And if it scratches you, you turn into one. Well, actually, that last bit's not true. Werewolves are just something people made up to scare themselves. So maybe it's us who've made the wolf the most feared animal in history. And that fear has driven us to hunt it close to extinction. If you want to frighten children, there's no better animal than a wolf. Whether it's in fairy tales or cartoons, he's always plotting new ways to trap and eat the innocent. Interestingly, his usual fantasy prey is the lamb, a potent Christian symbol. The prairie wolf, or coyote, was no friend of the American Plains Indians or the cartoon Roadrunner. They both saw the wolf as a trickster, an animal not to be trusted, a creature to be thrown from the highest ravine and then flattened by an anvil. But far from being lone killers, wolves are social animals. They live in packs and nurture their young. Although it lacks the sharp claws and neck-breaking jaws of the big cats, the wolf is a powerful and dangerous animal. It can kill prey several times its own size by hunting in a pack. As we've become more and more detached from the process of killing our own food, some people have started to see this behaviour as somehow cruel. If people were perfectly designed killing machines and spent more of their time pouncing majestically onto terrified gazelle, they'd have a different attitude. But would it make them bad? Are cats bad? Animals like this cheetah are simply following their basic instinct to catch prey and to try and eat it. Of course, it doesn't always go the cheetah's way, and when the gazelle wins the day and escapes, we're pleased that the underdog has survived, the good over the bad. Now, cannibalism isn't generally seen as polite table manners, but in the animal world it has a sad but logical place. This young male lion is the new leader of a pride of females, but none of these cubs are his, so one by one he kills them in order to bring their mothers into season sooner. Alligators too eat their own kind, not necessarily for the same reason. They'll just eat anything that moves, relation or not. What may seem bad to us is for them simply survival. Death simply is part of life. In fact, it's pretty much the end of it. So perhaps we don't like to be reminded that some animals must die so that others can live. This leopard's eyes are bigger than its belly. It's collected far more food than it can possibly eat, unless it buys a fridge, which obviously it won't. While humans seem to admire nature's hunters, they're generally revolted by scavengers. But like all animals, vultures play their part in the great and majestic scheme that is the life of our planet. With their faces covered in blood, they squabble over a stolen corpse, stealing even from each other. In Africa, the hyena is an object of superstition. Perhaps because just like the vulture, the spotted hyena is always close on the heels of death. In folklore, they're witch doctors' pets, half dog and half cat, in league with the devil and difficult to house train. Their famous laugh seems to come from another world, and even more disturbing for us, they're one of the few animals that don't seem to be afraid of humans. Hyenas have a reputation for being shapeshifters. In Europe, we have our werewolves. In Africa, they have hyena men. Much of this superstition arises from the fact that both male and female hyenas have identical-looking genitals. This one's a female. But despite this, they're not confused about their sexuality. Like the lion, the hyena's just looking for his next meal, and he doesn't mind much where it comes from. Hyenas may be thieves and bullies, but bullying and stealing are common ploys in the animal kingdom. And sometimes the bully has to take his own medicine. This hyena folds its small haunches up to protect its belly from being ripped open by these hunting dogs, even after they've stolen its food. Next, we meet some of nature's most cunning and notorious thieves and thugs. Prepare to judge them for yourself. The badger, for most of us, is a friendly, trustworthy character from children's storybooks. But the honey badger has a reputation for being the meanest animal in Africa, although its meanness extends mainly to bees. Once he's discovered a hive, he'll completely destroy it, ransacking, pillaging and scoffing under a barrage of furious stings which he feels but ignores in his honey-crazed frenzy. By the time he's through, he'll have eaten the equivalent of 3 million sugar puffs. The most notorious and probably the best known piece of deceit in the animal kingdom is the work of the cuckoo. It selects the nest of a smaller bird, like this reed warbler's, removes some of its eggs, and then lays its own. Incredibly, the returning mother doesn't notice that several small eggs have somehow turned into one big one and continues to look after the nest. She doesn't even have the nous to suspect that something's wrong when the cuckoo egg hatches first and the enormous great squatter throws her remaining eggs out of the nest. Somehow this chick knows that its diminutive surrogate mother is going to need all her strength to bring it up. Without the competition from what would have been its stepbrothers and sisters, the cuckoo grows at an astounding rate. Within a few days, it's bigger than its adopted mum and keeps the tiny reed warbler busy round the clock, constantly demanding food. Still, the mother fails to notice anything out of the ordinary. Eventually, the chick's so fat that it's bigger than the nest and passes its time doing this impression of Jabba the Hutt. Still, the reed warbler is oblivious. The cuckoo's nearly ready to fly south from Britain to Africa for the winter. Next spring, it will return, find a mate and another gullible mother to continue its underhand adoption scheme. The exhausted warbler will lay again this spring, and hopefully this time raise some of her own offspring. Now for some more really bad bird behaviour. The skua, that's the black one, is a pirate of the skies. It's mugging this gannet. In fact, it's a clever if unpleasant strategy for getting an easy meal. The gannet becomes so distressed by the bullying skua that it's literally sick in flight and regurgitates its recent meal, giving the skua a lovely vomity dinner. When it comes to delinquent birds, the skua has some pretty bad behavioural problems. As before, the skua is using terror tactics, dunking this kittiwake and forcing it to spew its recent meal. But what's good eating for the skua is also good for the shark. There are bigger bullies to contend with. Aggression between animals is motivated by two of the most basic instincts in the world, to eat and to mate. If this leopard seal wants a meal, it picks on a penguin. And these elephant seals are chest-butting each other over some gorgeous flippery ladies. But whether battling over a mate, for food, territory or rank, the fights are always serious. Displays of dominance don't usually end in injury. The point's made with threat, intimidation and posing about. Of course, there are always a few who just refuse to be intimidated. Even if some animal behaviour appears to be just bad-tempered or plain stubborn, their aggression will always have a logical explanation. Or will it? This colobus monkey may be the exception. There's no apparent reason why it should be so mercilessly winding up this dick. It's just having a go. What's the natural world coming to? Monkeys and apes are so highly intelligent, they've even been known to pose as waiters in their search for an easy meal. And baboons like this one are quick to learn, soon discovering that crime pays, especially crimes against humans. Breaking and entering, taking without consent, possession of a big red naked backside, they cannot stoop too low. Car crime is a common problem among adolescent baboons. Electric fences don't pose much of a problem to these cunning hooligans. They won't get past the minefield, though. Here they are picking up a spot of fast food, and they always leave without paying. Baboons are, in fact, notoriously bad tippers. In short, bad animals. We tend to see animals that threaten us as bad, and the crocodile is probably the biggest, baddest and most calculating of them all. Whether you're a baboon or a wildebeest, staying out of its digestive tract is definitely a priority. Never smile at a crocodile. To be honest, smiling at them isn't much of a risk. Just try not to drink out of their swimming pool. In early Christian belief, being eaten by a crocodile indicated that a person had gone to hell and that a burial might be a little hard to arrange. But for the wildebeest, being invited round for dinner at Mr. and Mrs. Crocodile's place always turns out badly. And meeting the family is always a painful experience. One of the earliest descriptions of the dragon as a fire-breathing beast is in the book of Job in the Old Testament. Out of his mouth go burning lamps, and sparks of fire leap out. Wherever the dragon crops up in myths and legend from across the world, it's associated with evil. These dragons are in fact large monitor lizards. Some have red and yellow flicking tongues, and it's thought that these may have given rise to the legends of fire breathing. These African savanna monitors are fiercely territorial. We've every reason to put Komodo dragons in our bad books. They kill people. Their record's 8 in 1 year. At 3 metres long and weighing over 130 kilograms, It can also kill deer and wild boar. Giant lizards like these bite all kinds of animals and then let them run off. They then follow them for days until the victim finally dies from blood poisoning. The monitor's mouth is so full of bacteria that the bitten wound is sure to become infected. And the lizard's there to pick up the pieces. Monitor lizards are even a match for the venomous snake, although with scale-melting halitosis like that, it's hardly surprising. The symbol of the snake is a potent one. It's inspired more cults, mysteries and third-rate tattoos than any other bad animal. As a recurring motif in myth, art, religion and heavy metal album covers, the snake is a great all-rounder. Snakes can be deadly poisonous and kill more people every year than any other animal. To celebrate, we're giving this one a balloon. You see, no sense of fun. We think of snakes as slimy, secretive, slithering around and emerging from dark tunnels without warning. But in reality, they aren't slimy, just secretive and slithery. In Christianity, the creation myth blames the wily ways of the snake for man being banished from paradise. Its punishment was to crawl through dust on its belly for all the days of its life, which is a shame, because prior to this, the snake was an excellent Morris dancer. Although they're limbless, snakes are good climbers. Many, like this Madagascan boa, have powerful prehensile tails and large scales on their belly which can be tilted backwards and forwards to drag them up the trunks of trees. Popular culture has taught us to steer well clear of the snake. It can kill in two equally unpleasant ways, either by squeezing its victim to death, like this Galapagos snake constricting a lava lizard, or by injecting a fatal dose of venom with its fangs, a technique favoured by the South American indigo snake. This highly venomous coral snake only eats other snakes. Its mouth isn't wide enough to swallow anything else. Its bright colours warn potential predators to leave well alone. This civet seems largely oblivious to one of nature's most aggressive snakes, the cobra. Unfortunately for the cobra, it's immune to its venom, and the civet knows it. The thrasher bird is also fearless when it comes to snakes. Its reactions are fast enough to land a few good pecks on this egg-bent serpent. A few pecks aren't going to bother this anaconda, though, unless they're delivered by a pterodactyl. Its huge size, up to 9 metres, means that it has very few predators at all. It's king of the South American swamp and will kill anything that comes its way, including this otter, which will be no more than a tasty snack for the snake. Anacondas can swallow children up to the age of 9. Any older and they lay around in its stomach moaning that they want to stay out all night. So this curious otter is dicing with death. The spider, thousands of times smaller than the huge anaconda, can still generate terror in humans. Although most spiders can't hurt us, there's something about them which we find repugnant. People often say they don't like the way they move. Perhaps this spider would be less frightening if it learnt to rollerblade. Or would that just be infinitely worse? There's only one thing more terrifying than a big hairy spider climbing up your arm, and that's an enormous hairy spider creeping inexorably up your sweating naked torso. So it's little wonder that from the earliest times, Hollywood was keen to exploit our irrational fear. More people suffer a phobia of spiders than any other creature. And when you peer at them in close-up, they do look like monsters from another world. In Africa, they've achieved the status of trickster gods. Would you trust this thing? Like so much other stuff that we don't understand, spiders have become objects of fear and revulsion. Bad creatures. But fear of spiders isn't universal. Some cultures see them as a positive female force. Other cultures see the spider's web as a metaphor for the universe, with the spider as the great weaver, the creator who spins the thread of life, and then catches flies on it. This spider casts a net of silk over its prey to trap it, then bundles it up in a parcel and injects its dissolving venom into the still live prey, which it then consumes as a liquid meal, a bit like a thick shake. Such a grim method of killing has earned our contempt, but were it not for the spider, we'd eat a lot more flies ourselves, every time we breathed in. Nightmarish arachnids are all very well, but you'd probably rather find one of them in your bath than what's creeping up next. The scorpion is rarely portrayed as a cuddly bedtime companion. They're evil and destructive in most mythologies. Scorpius, the 8th sign of the zodiac, was sent to Earth to punish the hunter Orion, who'd been boasting that he could kill any animal on Earth. He must have felt a right idiot as Scorpius repeatedly stung him to death. This wood wasp is a bit of a cuckoo and has adopted a particularly unpleasant form of fostering. It's only since we've begun to film it in huge close-up that we've discovered a whole new alien world of bad behaviour. The wood wasp taps on the bark of trees until it hears the echo from a pupating insect in a wood burrow. Is it just saying a friendly hello to a fellow invertebrate? No, it's looking for somewhere to leave its egg, which it injects through the wood and into the home of the unsuspecting pupa. Once inside, the uninvited eggs burrow into the host pupa and begin to eat it from the inside out. The whole grisly process takes about 20 days, during which time the wood wasp pupa displays the ultimate bad manners for a house guest. And having completely devoured its host, it prepares to take over its house. By the time the wood wasp is fully developed, there's nothing left of the host, and the new adult fills the entire chamber. The digger wasp is a conscientious parent, and with the aid of her trusty paralysing sting, she provides the next generation with a constant supply of fresh food, kept alive in an underground burrow, like a sort of pantry. In the world of insects, things are not always what they seem, as this tiger beetle larvae is about to find out. This type of digger wasp is a master of disguise, a talent that it uses to play a particularly unpleasant trick on the hapless tiger beetle larvae. Tiger beetle larvae usually eat ants. This digger wasp has evolved to look like an ant, and the disguise is good enough to fool the larvae, which, let's face it, probably isn't the hardest animal to outwit at the best of times. Cunningly, the wasp's waist is, well, a wasp waist, and just too small for the tiger beetle to get a decent grip on it. The wasp slips past and into the burrow. Once inside the burrow, the wasp unfurls its huge egg-laying tube and injects its eggs onto the unsuspecting larvae, which will soon begin to feel distinctly unwell. For the tiger beetle larvae, it's a bleak future, dominated largely by slow, painful death. Real ants will feed on live prey, but they prefer it to be dead. These meat ants are equipped with razor-sharp pincers, which they use to slice fillets of meat from carcasses. Essentially, they do a good job. Nothing's going to waste. But we secretly know what these ants can do to a dead insect, they could also do to us. Going out under a torrent of hungry ants has got to come fairly low on your wish list. It's a bad thing. Very, very bad. Ants live in highly organised societies. Because of their small size, they've learned to cooperate in an impressive way. They may bite, but they do a lot of good work for the environment, so there's a lot to recommend the humble ant. Especially if you happen to be a thorny devil. This extraordinary resident of the deserts of Australia is a voracious consumer of ants, but it's picky. It'll only eat 6 species of ants, and it won't even touch sprouts. Although we've given it the Latin name Moloch horridus, it's harmless to man, unless of course you go running barefoot in the desert. The seashore can also be a risky spot to slip off your shoes, especially if you come across one of these. This is a stonefish. Common in the Indian and Pacific Oceans, it's the most deadly fish known to man. These spines are the bits to avoid. They contain cardiotoxins so strong that they can stop a man's heart in seconds. Although we probably evolved from the sea, its deep dark waters remain a mystery. An alien environment teeming with entities you just don't want to pick a fight with. The jellyfish, little more than a lump of mucus, amazes and disgusts us, and occasionally stings us. The Earth's seas are the largest and least explored habitat on the planet, And since we're so clumsy in the water, we have reason to fear animals which could chase us so effortlessly through this world. And there is real danger here. The moray eel is a vicious predator which can deliver a savage bite. This sea snake carries the most powerful venom of any animal we know. It's related to the snakes that live on land, but has adapted itself for marine life. Most have to come up to breathe every 20 minutes or so, but there are a few that can stay submerged for up to 2 hours. Unlike the moray eel, the sea snake is very passive and it rarely bites humans. This olive sea snake is very inquisitive, and it'll allow itself to be handled without protest. Myths, both ancient and modern, have made the shark the most feared animal of the sea. Although only a few of the 350 species have a reputation for attacking man, those that do have appeared in so many disappointing sequels that the rest have been tarred with the same brush. We fear the shark because of its speed, its reputation for biting men in half, and its ability to smell blood from huge distances. 30% of the shark's brain is used for scent detection, and they can smell prey at up to 1 kilometre. The way in which an animal eats may have a lot to do with whether we like it or not, and the shark doesn't even use a fork. The shark is the original sea monster, feared by swimmers, sailors, and sea lions alike. But sharks aren't out to get us. Most of them prefer the blood of fish to that of humans. In fact, more people are killed each year by dogs, pigs and deer than are by sharks. So your chances of being eaten by a shark when you're walking down the street are virtually zero. King Kong movies say a lot about our feelings towards gorillas. They're bigger and stronger than us, they like fighting with dinosaurs and planes, and they can fall in love with the tiniest of women. But perhaps because we're so closely related, our fear of this monster is tinted with sympathy and understanding. No one cried when Jaws got killed. For all animals, one of the most basic instincts is to protect ourselves and our offspring. This biologist is trying to introduce an abandoned baby gorilla to this group. The dominant male threatens the biologist, but he's simply trying to protect this orphaned baby gorilla from what he perceives as a dangerous human. Gorillas are among the gentlest and most caring of the great apes. Sadly, it's taken us so long to understand the true nature of the gorilla that we've come close to making them extinct. When we decree that an animal's bad, it's only through ignorance and misunderstanding. There's no such thing as a bad animal. Morality was created to govern human behaviour. Applying our standards to a snake is as fruitless and stupid as asking a game show hostess to give us a genuine smile. Animals may threaten us with their behaviour or scare us with their shape and size, but there's only one creature on the planet that the word bad can ever accurately be applied to, and that's the guinea pig. No, all right, it's us.